Morning, members. Morning. On this beautiful day, at this annual council, I'll chair the meeting in the absence of your new chairman to be elected. So, with that having been introduced, if I can ask the current chairman to leave the room, please. Thank you. So the first item on the agenda, members, is the election of the chairman of council. Do I have a proposer? Councillor Watt, and a seconder? Councillor Roger, I think, was next. And who are you proposing and seconding?
I would like to propose Councillor Robert Francis.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? No. I've got a proposer and a seconder. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Okay. Could Councillor Francis be asked back into the room, please? Thank you, Councillor Francis. You were nominated and voted unanimously. So thank you for your service and welcome to Chairman of Council.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. It's a great honour for me for you to re-elect me as your chairman, and I'm very pleased to accept. Thank you very much for that. But I would mention I will not be standing for re-election next year. I'll give you plenty of notice. We will need to choose some new blood from amongst you wonderful councillors who I've worked with now for a number of years, and I'm sure one of you will come forward next year. But thank you very much for your confidence in me, and I will do my utmost this year to work with you in order to get the huge projects that we've got lined up for our community to try and get these over the line, alongside, obviously, delivering the best service for our community with our standard day job, as it were. But it's really important that we've got some really good projects for our community, as you're well aware, and we need to get those over the line. So you will have my utmost commitment to work with you to achieve that. So thank you. Without further ado, we'll take the nominations for Vice Chairman. Could I have a proposer, please, Councillor Watt?
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to propose Councillor Frank Grotting.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Bedford, thank you. Are there any other nominations? No? Well, could I have a vote, please, for Councillor Grotting as Vice Chairman? That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Would you like to join me, Councillor Grotting? Congratulations.
Thank you, colleagues, for your continued support, and I hope to support you as we work through another very busy and productive year. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we have any further agenda items, I would like to invite Reverend Carol Holmes to lead us in prayer. Thank you.
I'm happy, as always, to share some words of prayer. I invite you to be outstanding and a moment of quietness as we perhaps reflect on the beginning of this new council year, the duties and the privileges of this O God, your blessing of wisdom and grace. Confirm in us the truth by which we rightly live. Confront us with the truth from which we wrongly turn. Keep us upright in the way, faithful to the truth, and eager for life in all fullness, for ourselves and for all people. In the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you very much indeed. Item 3 on our agenda are declarations of interest. Do I have any, please? Councillor Roger.
Yeah, I'd like to declare an interest in item number 18, as I'm a director and executive vice chair of the Islands Partnership.
Thank you. Councillor Peacock.
I'd like to declare a conflict with number 15, where I have a small pecuniary interest because I'm a contractor for DMS, who are doing work providing boat services to inform St Agnes for them, and also number 18, where I'm a director of Islands Partnership.
Thank you very much. We move on now to item 4 on our agenda, the minutes of our previous meeting. Do we have any issues around those minutes, please? No, then in that case, could I have a proposer and a seconder, Councillor Sims, Councillor Mumford, for their adoption? All those in favour? It's unanimous, thank you very much. The Chairman's announcements, item 5. I would just like to express our condolences to the family of Mark Duddridge, who you will be aware was the chairman of the Isles of Scilly and Cornwall Local Enterprise Partnership, and very sadly passed away very recently. We much appreciated our liaison with Mark and the work that he did for this council and for Cornwall and for his friendship. I know that you would want me to wish his family sincere condolences. Thank you. I would also like to take this opportunity to welcome Councillor Peacock to our members. He's just recently been elected, as you will be aware, and we welcome you warmly, John. Thank you very much. Item 6 on our agenda is questions under Standing Order 14. I have none. Item 7 is to consider reports from committees. I have none. Item 8, to consider motions in accordance with Standing Order 12. I have none. And number 9, urgent items. I have none. So item 10 on our agenda is the terms of reference of council bodies, which is the report of our Democratic Services Member Liaison, Andy Thomas. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Chairman. This is obviously a standing item that comes to council, so I would appreciate that you have a look at the recommendations and let me know if you wish to proceed that way.
Thank you. Councillor Mark.
I'll propose recommendations.
Thank you. Have a seconder, please. Councillor Legg. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you very much, Andy. We move on to item 11 on our agenda, which is the external appointments. Bear with me one moment. So the first appointment we need to make is the appointment to the National Association of AONBs. We currently have Johan Hicks in that role. Unless there are any other nominations, could somebody propose him, please? Councillor Legg?
In the notes, it suggests that the AONB itself is authorised to make this
and that they keep the lead member for environment informed. Should I propose that we continue that?
Yep. Yep. Thank you. So, could I have a nomination, please, a proposal? Councillor Grottick.
As Councillor Legg has said, Johan Hicks is in that position at the moment and serving well. So I think we need to just endorse the continuation of his role. So I'd like to propose that this council endorses and supports the continued post being granted to Johan Hicks, if I may.
Thank you. And Councillor Legg will second that. Thank you very much. We move on now to the Aldersley AONB partnership. We have 2 members required for that. We have at the moment Councillor Watt on that, but we need to elect another member. Councillor Anita Bedford, please.
Please may I propose Councillor John Peacock.
Thank you. Councillor Grottick.
May I second that recommendation, please? But may I also ask if it's appropriate that we ask Councillor Bedford to be the reserve councillor in case either of those candidates cannot attend the meeting? I know she's interested in that particular area, if she's comfortable with that, and it's appropriate. Can I ask the monitoring officer, perhaps?
Yes, I can't see a problem with that. Thank you.
Okay. So, Councillor Legg.
In my current role or former role as lead member for environment, etc., I've actually been taking the place of Councillor Watt. I don't know whether we have previously specifically appointed Councillor Watt or whether we had appointed his role when he was the lead member. Can I suggest that we make it the lead member role rather than the named person?
Yeah, that would be sensible. Thank you, Councillor Legg. So, if you're happy with that, is there a seconder, please, that is made for the lead member? Thank you. All those in favour of that? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. So we've got Councillor Peacock proposed and seconded as well. Could you vote on that, please? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. The Local Nature Partnership is next, and Councillor Legg is currently sitting on that. Councillor Legg?
I propose that we also put that into the portfolio for the lead member for environment.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Watt? All those in favour? Right, that's carried as well. Thank you. Now we have the South West Regional Flood and Coastline Committee, which is already the lead member for environment, and 1 member required. So, are you happy with?
I'll propose the lead member for environment.
Thank you. And seconded, Councillor Grottick. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. The Devon and Cornwall Police and Crime Panel is currently Councillor Roger. Do you wish to continue in that role, Councillor Roger? The proposer?
I'll propose Councillor Roger.
Thank you. And seconded by Councillor Guy. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. The Medical Travel Transport Group is currently Councillor Bedford. Councillor Grottick?
I believe Councillor Bedford wishes to stand down, so I'd like to propose our new Councillor Peacock for that role, please.
Thank you. Councillor Sims?
I was just going to say, after this one, are there any changes? Because if it's as it was last year, we just do it on one vote.
Yeah. Okay.
I was waiting till this one because I realised there was a change here, perhaps.
I'll second Councillor Peacock.
Thank you. All those in favour of Councillor Peacock? Thank you. That's unanimous. So as Councillor Sims has pointed out, the Island Futures Board, the Cornwall and Isles of Scilly Leadership Board, the Cornwall Partnership, do that separately. Yeah. No, so we'll just take the Island Futures Board and the Cornwall and Isles of Scilly Leadership Board next on block. Could I have a proposer for that, please? Councillor Marcus, seconded Councillor Legg. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. The Cornwall Partnership NHS Foundation Trust. Councillor Grottick.
Thank you, Chair. As colleagues know, I've represented the council on that body for some years, and I'm very pleased to say that Councillor Peacock has shown an interest in taking this role over, and I would like to propose him for the role.
Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Mumford. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. So, the Isles of Scilly Charitable Trust and the Richard Addison Trust are already allocated. So we don't need to vote on that, I don't think. Thank you. So now we have the Cornwall and Isles of Scilly Health and Care Partnership Senate. Councillor Grottick.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to suggest an amendment. The Chief Executive sits for the Council on the Senate, and the lead member for adults at the moment is the nominated second person. But as far as I understand, the lead member for children would like to retain his responsibilities in this area. So may I suggest that we actually amend slightly to say the Chief Executive will remain as is on your paper, but also we amend it to the lead member for adults and public health or the lead member for children to give us the flexibility and the continuity in that role.
Thank you. I think that's a good suggestion. Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Marcus. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. So the Isles of Scilly Health and Social Care Integration Programme Board and the Cornwall and Isles of Scilly Local Enterprise Partnership and the Isles of Scilly Transport Board and the Cornwall and Isles of Scilly Economic Prosperity Board, unless there are any changes required. Sorry, Councillor Williams.
Yeah, can I suggest that on the Isles of Scilly Health and Social Care Integration Board, we have 3 seats, but I think it would make more sense for one of them to be including the lead member for adults as well, if we're having separate post holders for that role. Health obviously covers children and adults, so there's a bit of a gap if we don't adjust that, I think.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And I think that's seconded by Councillor Grottick. All those in favour of that change, please? It's unanimous. Thank you. So, with that change, those other boards I've just mentioned, are there any other changes required to that, or can we vote for that en bloc, please? Okay, so could I have a proposer? Councillor Marcus, seconded Councillor Grottick. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Officer Andy Thomas.
Yeah, just to add to that, obviously there was an addendum to that report that you will have received as well, and it was to do with the Town Hall Museum and Cultural Centre appointments, which you only just made in March, but will need to be re-ratified here today as well. So they were for the Business Planning Group, the Audiences and Programming Group, Governance and Organisational Transition Group, Building Group, Elections and Interpretation Group, and Fundraising Group. Do you want me to read out the current councillors? I'm getting a shake of head from Councillor Marcus.
I'd like to propose them as they are in the paper.
Thank you. Councillor
Yeah, I'll second that. Just to mention, though, if any other councillors want to get involved in any of those groups, there is room for more than one councillor, so if anyone else wanted to get involved, they can. I can't see any great enthusiasm.
Okay, thank you. So I have a proposal and seconder. All those in favour, please. Unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Andrew. So we move on now to item 12 on our agenda, which is the internal appointments. Right, the first of those is the licensing committee, which is all elected members apart from myself, and the so we'll take that first, please. Can I have a proposer for that? Councillor Mumford, seconded Councillor Grottick. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. The scrutiny committee. We have a vacancy, and we have Councillor Marcus, Councillors Mumford, Legg, Sims, Watt, Williams and Bedford already on it. Councillor Mumford.
I believe Councillor Bedford wishes to come off, so actually there's two vacancies.
Thank you.
I would like to propose Councillor Peacock, and I'd like to propose Councillor Guy.
Thank you.
Give us our numbers. And sorry? Oh, yes, actually. No, I'm sorry, Councillor Guy. Tim Dean's name's not there. He is a member of scrutiny. So
okay.
That's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've got 8. So Councillor Dean, you're not on the list. So I'd like to propose Councillor Peacock plus Councillor Marcus, myself, Councillor Legg, Councillor Sims, Councillor Watt, Councillor Williams and Councillor Dean.
Thank you. Councillor Guy?
I'd like to second that, please.
Thank you. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. The IFCA, we currently have Councillor Guy, Councillor Legg, Councillor Watt. Councillor Guy?
Propose the status quo, please.
Thank you. And seconded Councillor Marcus. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. The Governance Committee, which is Councillor Marcus, Mumford, Legg, Sims, Watt, Williams, Bedford and Grottick. Councillor Marcus.
Propose the status quo.
Thank you. Seconded Councillor Legg. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. We move on now to lead members. I'm not aware of any changes, so I propose to take them all on block. No, we do need to take them separately. But what I will do is we'll take the lead member for planning regulatory services, the lead member for children, the lead member for economy, tourism and transport, lead member for finance, governance, risk and performance, and the lead members for environmental services and climate change, and the lead member for housing and corporate estate on block. Could I have a proposer for that, please? Councillor Sims, seconded Councillor Roger. All those in favour? Thank you. And we now need to take the lead member for services to adults and public health. Councillor Sims.
Could I propose Councillor Mumford?
Thank you. Councillor Legg, seconding. All those in... Sorry, Councillor Bedford.
So before we proceed with that, could Simon actually clarify that if Councillor Mumford does take lead member role, where does it sit with the scrutiny role if a subject from adult social care comes before scrutiny, please?
Given the size of the council members, it would be difficult for anybody to avoid the scrutiny thing, and there may be a need on occasion for somebody to declare an interest, but just in general, in dealing with scrutiny matters, that would not need to be the case. It would be something we could discuss as it moves on, and if necessary, a dispensation be granted.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have a proposer and a seconders. All those in favour of Councillor Mumford for lead member for adults? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. We now have the appointments to the Climate Emergency Working Group. Councillor Grottick.
Yes, I understood that Councillor Marcus had actually resigned from this group a while ago. Councillor Peacock is interested in joining the group, so therefore I would propose that he does. I would say that I understand that this is a working group rather than a formal committee, so I think it's more a question of saying all hands to the pump, and we all have an interest in climate emergency, but the group itself is happy to carry on, I believe, with that amendment.
Okay, Councillor Legg.
I believe Councillor Bedford had replaced Councillor Marcus on the group. She has attended it, so I would be happy to make it 7 members to include both Bedford and Peacock.
Okay. So could I have a proposer, please, that we make it 7 members and that we include Councillor Bedford and Councillor Peacock. Councillor Grottick proposed, seconded Councillor Legg. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Yeah, the communications working group can be done informally, so I suggest, because other people can join if they wish to, that we leave that as informal. Thank you. The voting subcommittee, all of the licensing committee are eligible to sit. I don't think we need to vote on that either. Safer Scilly, which is formerly known as the Isles of Scilly Community Safety Partnership, as per their terms of reference, is the Vice Chairman of the Joint Health and Wellbeing Board for Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, and the Police and Crime Commissioner representative, which is Councillor Roger. So could I have a proposer for that, please? Councillor Marcus. Seconder. Councillor Peacock. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. So that concludes our appointments. Thank you, Andrew Thomas. The next item on our agenda is item 13, the Charnbury planning application in the hands of our Chief Planning Officer, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. So this is slight correction. I think the agenda says P230031. It's actually P23001. This is a proposal to convert an existing workshop building that is currently being used as a storage facility in connection with Scilly Spirits Gin Distillery. Its last use was a workshop with some ancillary retail sales, and an upper floor was approved as storage. The current proposal is to convert the first floor into a modest 1-bedroom unit of residential accommodation with some waste and recycling and bicycle storage in the ground floor. The alterations proposed are minor, with no extensions or re-roofing required. The building is not a listed building and does not sit within the curtilage or setting of any other listed buildings. Having considered the application, which will deliver a small unit of local need accommodation with only minor alterations to internal layout and improvements to the building's thermal efficiency, it is considered appropriate. The building has an existing small curtilage to the front that could be used for the parking of a vehicle if required, but access is likely to continue to be required given the nature and use of the storage at ground floor. The applicant has indicated that they would let the accommodation for local occupation and are happy with the Section 106 legal agreement. The building is located in a vulnerable area for flood risk. The applicant has provided a flood risk assessment and a flood evacuation plan. You will note that officers have assessed the first floor accommodation as acceptable from a flooding perspective. So although access and egress to the building for occupants would be into a flooded road, the nature of the flooding is such that it dissipates as the tide retreats. The level of accommodation is above the height, I'm talking about the level of accommodation, is above that required in terms of sea level rises and the impact of climate change over the expected lifetime of the accommodation. The flood evacuation plan is considered acceptable from an emergency planning perspective. And I just point out there's a couple of pre-commencement conditions that I've recommended, which are site waste management plan and sustainable design measures, which the applicant has provided in his application, so I would propose that those aren't actually required as pre-commencement conditions. Other than that, the application is recommended for approval.
Councillor Marcus, please.
Yeah, I think this is pretty straightforward. Nothing much to say. It's good to see another bit of accommodation for local staff, basically. So I propose recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Dean?
Yeah, same. Second the recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Williams?
Oh, yeah, I do support the comments, and obviously housing is welcome. But just my wider point was, until a few years ago, this was a retail space, and if you look down the length of Hugh Town, we've lost 2 banks, a pub, an office that's not really open to the public, a clothing shop. This area, it's just, I think as a council, and it might come up in a later agenda item, we're sort of losing the retail value of our main street. And obviously I don't want to stand in the way of this proceeding. I think it's a great use of the space. But I think there are wider consequences we just need to be aware of before it gets any worse, perhaps.
Thank you very much for those wise words. Councillor Williams. Councillor Sims.
Yeah, exactly the same point. It might seem trivial, but if you're absolutely desperate for a 50 mil, 6 mil bull, and there's no over here to buy one, you know, you can have real issues. We have got a real impasse with that, as well stocked with nuts and bolts, things like that, and we haven't got that anymore, and it's a real problem for some people sometimes.
Thank you. Councillor Guy.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to point out that I endorse the timber windows to UPVC. I just like the idea of that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, with those points made, we have a proposer and a seconders. All those in favour, please, of this application. Thank you, that's passed. Thank you very much, Lisa. Right, we move on now to item 14, which is the Isles of Scilly Fire and Rescue Service Community Risk Management Plan, in the hands of our Chief Fire Officer, Mark Hewitt. Good morning, Mark. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, and thank you. Good morning, councillors and colleagues, and apologies that I couldn't be with you this morning in person for this meeting, but Station Manager Kevin James and myself are here for agenda item 14, which is the Isles of Scilly Fire and Rescue Service Community Risk Management Plan, which will take us through the years of this year, 2023 to 2026. I appreciate that all the associated documents in relation to this item are in the pack provided, but I think it would be useful if I just verbally confirm the purpose of this item and the recommendations. The recommendations are that the draft Isles and Scilly Fire and Rescue Services Community Risk Management Plan 2023 to 26, as detailed in Appendix 1 of the report, is approved. And secondly, that the approved Community Risk Management Plan 2023 to 26 is promoted to communities once finalised and published. And Chair, I will also say that this has also been through our scrutiny committee prior to coming to full council today, and had support there. So I know councillors will have seen this document already. Just a little bit of a background to it. The government requires all fire and rescue services to produce a community risk management plan, known as a CRMP in short. And you may have previously seen it in a former format known as the Integrated Risk Management Plan, IRMP. But it must cover a 3-year time span and certainly developed in consultation with the public, our partners, and any other key stakeholders, which we think we have done well on this occasion. I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank all the teams in the Isles of Scilly Council with supporting us with that. The government places responsibility for preparing the CRMP with each fire authority, which is yourselves, and recommends that elected members are fully involved throughout all stages of this process, which again, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everyone that has. So we undertook our consultation through January and February, and we believe we had a very strong response rate, 125 responses across our 5 islands. And what you will find attached is a comprehensive consultation evaluation report. It's very interesting. There's some great detail in the findings, in the feedback and the outcome. And this really underpins our CRMP in terms of setting our objectives. And what will come from that will be a delivery plan. So actually, what are we going to deliver, and how are we going to deliver it? In developing this CRMP, we've used the National Fire Chiefs Council Toolkit, which has provided us a methodical approach to risk planning, and it's certainly been supported by a completed equality impact assessment. And this is probably the most thorough consultation and CRMP that we have produced to date. We've also listened to the HMI CFSRS and incorporated our previous inspection findings into our current plan, and we are achieving service improvement all the time we develop our plans. We have a much stronger focus on our core values, behaviours, expectations, and we are aligning to some national guidance where it's appropriate, basically to reduce duplication where something's been produced already. So that's a brief introduction. I take it that members, colleagues have read the CRMP and previously seen it, but at this time, as it sits in draft, can I ask if there is any questions of clarity, any feedback at this time before we produce the final version? And I do recognise, and we've made the amendments already, there might be some sort of formatting issues which we've addressed, and certainly included some figures on page 9 which were originally left out. So if I can ask either Kevin or myself if we can take any questions prior to the recommendations.
Thank you very much, Mark. I have a question from Councillor Watt.
Thank you, Chairman. It's not actually a question, just a complimentary comment about the quality of the report, particularly, and I think it's all summed up in paragraph 2.5. Community risk management planning is a process of ensuring the right resources are in the right place at the right time to bring about improved community safety. I think that's succinct, very clear and in plain English, and I congratulate the officer for the quality of the report.
Thank you very much. Absolutely agree with that. Thank you. Councillor Bedford, please.
I think it was referred to this report of scrutiny, wasn't it? This is the same report that we...
It is, yes.
It was just one query. Recently there was an incident on Briar,
yes.
Community risk management, and it was alleged a memorial firework which caused the issue with the fire. How is the fire service going to be dealing with such issues of these firework situations? Give information to people. Did they contact the fire service first? Is there information going out?
Yeah, absolutely, Councillor Bedford. I think this actual incident attracted an awful lot of media, not just on the Isles of Scilly, but certainly through the mainland as well. And it did actually provide an opportunity to put out our prevention messages, which is certainly don't use fireworks. Chinese lanterns have been quite a significant issue for us as well. So it will form part of our continuing prevention strategy and certainly messaging, and certainly are working together with the Wildlife Trust going forward. So in terms of responding, we believe we are in a better place because we have the provision of some new equipment to deal with wildfires, but our real focus has got to be on stopping the fire in the first instance. So information is signposted through the websites, and we will regularly, and particularly now we are experiencing the dry weather, the heat that we are, continue with that messaging at the moment around burning in the open, fireworks, etc.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you. Councillor Grottick, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to endorse colleagues' comments on the quality of the report, which is really clear. Thank you. I would just like to draw colleagues' attention to page 63 and the budget comment about the cost of our fire service compared with the general cost of a firefighter per head of population in the UK. And I would just say, which we all know, that this really reinforces our argument for a longer-term fair funding settlement from central government. So this is just a comment rather than a question. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Roger.
Yeah, again, thank you for the report. I just wanted to ask about business engagement. We had a recent incident in the last week or so where a business was served an enforcement notice and had to close the self-catering property, resulting in many cancelled holidays and et cetera, et cetera. So I just wanted to sort of criticism. I just want to ensure that I think in the 1/3 of businesses had some form of fire checkup by ourselves, and it was just to highlight what has happened recently and try to ensure that we can engage more fully with the business community to try and stave off any future enforcement which has such a knock-on effect to the visitor economy as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Yeah, if I can just respond to that, Councillor Bedford. Yeah, no, thank you very much. Certainly over the years, what we have learnt is we've tried to do inspections out of season previously, so it didn't really impact on the running of the business. But what we found, many properties were closed down during the winter months or in maintenance, so they could not be inspected. But what we are doing going forward is offering workshops, drop-in centres going forward, which we have done in the past, but I think there's a real opportunity to pursue those and make them a little bit more visible, just so business owners are aware of their sort of legal obligations and to the regulatory reform order. But point taken, and thank you.
Councillor Roger.
Yeah, no, thank you. My thinking was that we could use this recent occurrence as an opportunity to beat the business community with a bit of a stick to say, if you don't look at these issues potentially within your property, this is what will happen. So I think there's an opportunity there as well.
No, thank you. And we will always work with businesses first. You know, it's very much about engagement. If we can work with businesses, work through the solutions and the guidance, certainly that would be our preferred option before sort of resulting to any sort of enforcement action.
Thank you. Councillor Sims, please.
A very good report, as others have said. I think I've said everything I wanted to say about it at scrutiny. I'd just like to propose both recommendations.
Thank you. Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Mumford. All those in favour? Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Kevin, as well, for joining and for your work with this. And thank you, Mark, for the report and for attending today. Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
So, item 15 on our agenda is the update on climate adaptation SILI project, which is in the hands of Stephen Swaby, our project manager. Thank you.
Morning. I thought I'd start by just giving a brief précis of what's in the paper, and then I suspect there'll be a lot of questions and comments. So what the paper does is outline where we've got to with the Climate Adaptation SILI project. This is funded to the tune of just over £8.1 million by the European Regional Development Fund and the Environment Agency. And it's intended to provide coastal protection works against particularly flooding, but also against erosion for 4 of the islands that we have in the group, and also some rainwater harvesting tanks for all of the islands, and the Climate Change Adaptation Action Plan, which is yet to come to Council. What this report concerns is the activities that we're undertaking as part of the coastal flood protection works, and it explains where we've got to. Effectively, I'll outline the sequence of events that we've been through and the consequences of some changes that have taken place, and I've provided some recommendations on how we deal with the issues that arise from that. So in 2022, we went to construct the works on St Mary's, whilst also designing the works on the off-islands of Bryagh, St Agnes and St Martin's. The works on the off-islands were provided in outline design first, which is where you typically start with engineering works of this nature. We then sought feedback from the communities on the off-islands to ensure that what we were doing made sense. And whilst that was going on, we proceeded with a tender process to be able to engage the contractor for all of the works, including St Mary's. Now, it sounds a little bit back to front in the sense that we were dealing with consultation whilst we were also dealing with the tender. but it was necessary to be able to execute the works on St Mary's in sufficient time. What was evident in the tender was that the tender was for a value less than we had available in the budget, which is a positive thing. It means we had about £600,000 that we could have used for other things. And we subsequently used the feedback from the off-islands, particularly, to increase the scope of works to deal with some of the issues identified by the community. So this went into redesign, and final designs were provided for, particularly on Briar and St Agnes, some additional works. The additional consultation we subsequently did helped us understand exactly what those works would look like, and we then subsequently applied for planning. As part of the planning process, we received feedback from the community and from statutory consultees, which changed the way in which we might approach some things. So particularly from statutory consultees, we were requested to move works back on St Agnes, which increases the material volumes required, to change some of the works on Briar, where we both had a scheduled monument being affected by the works and impinging into the natural environment in the coastal zone. And as I explained in the paper, those two issues are mutually contradictory. You can't both push the works forward at Great Porth North to avoid the gig shed, the Tsar gig shed, and you can't retreat away from the coastline at the same time to avoid the impact on the natural environment. Something has to give. So the redesign required to deal with that particular issue, following consultation with statutory consultees, has added substantially to material volumes required. And where we've ended up is a substantial increase in material volumes for all of the islands. What we've then done is to cost that out and establish what the likely quantum would be required to fund it. It's more than we can afford, and as we've agreed previously with Council, there's no way that we'll be doing work that we can't afford to do, because it leaves Council in a great difficulty. We've also then, because of the substantial increase in volumes, required to work over a longer period of time, and given the constraints of working on the off-islands, which means we can't deliver materials in winter months, in fact we're limited to the months between May and the end of September, it makes it very difficult to undertake works in a way that doesn't have an effect on businesses that rely on visitors. And so following a discussion with the community, particularly on Briar, about the impact of delivering in the summer months, it was evident that we would have to change the way in which we worked. And this is to avoid the impacts on hotel residents particularly. So the consequence of all of this has been to leave us in a position where we need to reduce the scope of works or the type of works to something that we can afford to do. And at the moment, we're receiving feedback strongly from the Briar community, which suggests that they would prefer us not to do the extent of works that we originally proposed, because the volume of rock involved and the material quantities involved would have such an impact on their community. So what the paper does is to propose the various options that might be available to continue to operate the project, and recommends one particular approach. And that particular approach is effectively to complete the works as best we can on St Agnes, whilst reducing the material volumes to the minimum required to achieve the standard to protect the island from flooding, whilst then making sure that we have as much budget available as possible to do work on Briar. And the options for work on Briar suggested here might include local property level protection, but also protection of the Green Bay frontage, which is critical for the rainwater fed groundwater body, and of course the boatyard in the south end of the Green Bay area. I'm proposing in the paper a series of effects on budget and the way in which those are likely to pan out, and I'm suggesting that we also, if we need to, draw down on the local levy funding, which is £500,000 set aside as contingency funding by the local flood and coastal risk management committee. So I'd invite questions and comments.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Councillor Legg, please.
Thank you. Not so much questions, but a few sort of comments and perhaps changes to the proposals. with objections from statutory consultees having caused this delay and the associated costs eating into the budget, combined with strong concern from the residents of Briar, I felt that we should bring this paper to full council to determine the strategic approach going forward. The report sets out the best identified approach to deal with this, to start the work from St Agnes and identify cost savings while still delivering the objectives, and use the remaining budget to carry out the reduced level of works on Briar. The fallback position of reducing outcomes is not preferred, but should it be necessary, I believe this council would want that to be in line with each community's priorities. So I'd like to propose an amendment to recommendation 1D so that it reads, finally reducing the scope of works in line with each community's priorities to achieve fewer outcomes than originally identified. If I wasn't the lead member for environment, I know that as councillor for St Agnes, I would wish to be included in any discussions about changes to the scope of works, and so I would suggest that recommendation 3 includes consultation with the councillor for Briar at the end. I have emailed that around to everyone, the complete wording. I would also stress the importance of clear communication of the outcome of this item and propose a fifth recommendation that as soon as practical, a statement explaining the outcomes of this report in simple terms is released. With those recommendations, with those amendments, I'd propose these recommendations and open the floor to debate.
Thank you. I'd like to come next to Councillor Fraser. If you would like to say anything.
Well, yeah, I will when I can find my mute button. Yeah, I go along with everything that Harry has said there, and in this instance, Briar is more than happy to have the leftovers of what everybody else has used up. Stephen and I had much dialogue, and I thought Councillor Watt was also there. We had a fairly productive meeting on Briar and sort of established a scope of work there. But following that, the volume of rocket, it was almost 3 times what we had talked about in that meeting, and it's unrealistic on Briar. It was turning parts of the west side of Briar into Penzance Promenade, and it's just not in keeping when there's other softer methods to do it, and they're also more cost effective. So we had some very good dialogue last Friday, and with a number of the members, Stephen, and came to that conclusion. I circulated the sort of some minutes or thoughts from that meeting to the residents on Briar, and I've only had positive feedback from that. Explaining briefly much as Stephen has outlined in his report now, that things will be cut back, it will be much softer things, and we can be more targeted on certain properties and possibly look at the reinstating the old flood defence systems that were used in the past. So I'm happy for things to proceed as they are.
Thank you very much indeed, Andy. Councillor Bedford, please.
Thank you, Stephen. I don't know if I'm the only councillor, but I have really struggled with this report. I actually found it a bit confusing. In fact, I found it very confusing. There's 2 planning applications going in regarding climate adaptation, and the one from Briar has over 30 concerned letters that were opposing what was coming forward, and none of this information was put in this report. I just felt that the information that we really needed, or I needed as a councillor to make an informed decision, wasn't available in this report. Council should be transparent, and the public are listening, I hope, to this meeting, and they actually want to understand how we come to decisions. Andy's referred to the fact that there was a meeting last Friday with all the ones that were concerned, and the conclusions of that meeting were discussed with some of the residents of Briar. How do we convey that information over to the general public within a full council? There's been a lot of emails in the background, a lot of debate, and I just feel like there's been all this debate, but the residents of the Isles of Scilly, the voters, will not understand how we've come to the conclusion that have made a change in the recommendations. So I actually feel quite uncomfortable with the report that was how it was presented.
Stephen, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I'll comment. I think there's two matters in that, Councillor Bedford. One is that the management of the project comes before the planning application. So until we've decided here in this meeting what it is we propose to do, then the planning application can't be modified. When it is decided and we then choose to modify the planning application, that has to be reconsidered by the community as the planning application is made, some changes are made to it. So there is an opportunity there for the community to see exactly what is being proposed. But I think importantly, Councillor Legg's proposal for a fifth recommendation here to provide in straightforward terms what it is that has been proposed and summarising what's in this paper for the community would be a useful way of acting as sort of the interim explanation of what we propose to do. So there's two steps. There's the what is it we're thinking of doing, which is the project proposal, and then the planning application being revised to reflect that change. And at both stages, the community would be involved. There'd be recommendations put in front of them so they can see what we're proposing to do.
In all the emails that were going around in the debate, there was a lot of referring to the fact that South West Water will be put in a desalination plant, that there was something with the Hell Bay Hotel having significant work done regarding their sewage, about Western Power, and it almost became a mess in my head about what I understand what we're being asked to. You know, that we have to be mindful of the budget. We have to actually work within what we've got. But my concern was how it was presented. I just felt not all the information I needed to make a decision within this report, and I had to do an awful lot of ferreting around to try and get the background to understand what we were being asked to, what I was being asked to consider. And maybe I'm just alone in that, reason that it was quite confusing.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus, please.
I would agree the paper's confusing, but the benefit of the meeting on Friday really helped me clarify what the paper was about, basically. And it's, Harry's point about St Agnes we're doing St Agnes first and Briar getting the leftovers, which is fine. And yet, also, so I think there would be benefit for more review and clarity around papers and getting the message across about what is exactly needed. I just point out in the paper as well that there is work. This still does propose work for Briar next summer, and there is still going to be rock delivered and moved on Briar next summer.
If we proceed to do the limited scope of works, it's less likely that any rock will be brought to Briar. And there's two reasons for that. There is already 800 tonnes of rock that sits in the dunes at Popplestones, which we don't think is being effective. And we propose to reuse, and we have the agreement of Natural England to do that because it's within a SSSI, as long as we reinforce the dunes from which the rock is removed with sand taken from the rear of the dunes. Now, Councillor Fraser and I have talked about this, and there's been comments on the proposal from the community about the technical sense of doing that, taking that particular approach. But talking with engineers and from my own understanding of processes, I'm comfortable that that is an appropriate way to proceed. And if we then need to bring materials in for other parts of the island, such as continuing with the Green Bay site, we would propose to try and do that in a way which avoids impacts on the local community as much as possible. And as mentioned in the paper, there's one opportunity, for example, to deliver at Great Porth South rather than at Great Porth North, which means that you're south of the Great Khan, and therefore out of the way. And I have talked with contractors about being able to deliver, because it's not rock at Green Bay, it's smaller cobbles, large cobbles, doing that delivery directly into Green Bay, which is easier to do in some tide and wind states because it's sheltered on the leeward side of the island. Something that we need to still plan through, but it's feasible that we could do work on Briar that way.
And the community are aware of that, and the lead member for Briar.
Yes, I talked with Andy about the option.
So I think this is a really good example of how of community power, how the democracy can work in their favour as well. So I'd like to make sure that continues.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, please.
Could I just seek clarification on paragraph 3, Stephen, where you talk about St Mary's? I'll bring St Mary's into the discussion now. I thought Porth, let's talk about an additional 80 tonnes of rock potentially going at Porthmelon. I was under the impression Porthmelon was done and dusted. I just wanted to clarify what you mean by potential and where on the scale of potential that is, whether it will happen or not. And my other point, which isn't so much you, is I'd welcome some information from South West Water about what their investment plans are. I had no idea they were talking about desalination plants on various different places. So in the whole round conversation, I just welcome that from whoever can pull that together at some point, please.
So specifically at Porthmelon, the height of the works at Porthmelon has achieved the design height, which means that the protection against erosion and flooding is largely achieved. The engineer team that designed the works are concerned that the width of that crest is insufficient for the design that they've put together. There are two options for us here. One is to bring in the 80 tonnes of rock that's missing and place it. The other would be to accept that we've got enough protection, effectively to override what the engineers recommend and assume a lower standard of protection for the rock shifting around. Now, I'd prefer not to do that on my own because I'm not an engineer. I have been taking advice from a variety of other engineers about what would be appropriate. I would like to avoid bringing in the 80 tonnes if we can, because it's very expensive to do so, and it means we're not finishing Porthmelon when we said we would. But it's still a piece of work in progress to make a decision about whether we're prepared to accept the risk of that 80 tonnes not being placed in the near future. In terms of the South West Water investment, there is a programme of work that they've recently published, which is their Strategic Water Resource Management Plan, and in that they detail for the islands exactly what they're proposing to do over the next few years. And it's evident from that that they've got a proposal to do substantial capital investment on the off-islands to look at desalination plants that deal with the saltier groundwater that we have, and potentially also taking seawater. Now, the detail isn't available, so these are just proposals. But I have had a chat with South West Water about whether or not their plants would cope with salt water or groundwater that's saltier than just a little bit of salt in it. And they're comfortable that they can deal with salty water technically, which is good. It would be useful for Council to continue to engage through our project with South West Water in their proposals to make sure that they and we are aligned on what they're trying to achieve and what we're trying to achieve, and that they're coherent, and ideally we don't solve the same problem twice because it gets expensive.
Chief Executive, please. Stephen, could you turn your... Thank you. That's on now. Okay. It was just to add further to the point is that we're currently working with colleagues both at the Duchy through Natalie, with Tresco, with ourselves in terms of both Stephen's project and also Live West in terms of Coron Thomas, and trying to map out what everybody's trying to do all at the same time for two reasons, really. One is there a way of doing it smarter where we can maybe reduce costs, so the steamship group are involved as well in terms of transportation of materials, in terms of contractor villages, etc., etc. But probably more importantly, I think is the point you're making, is the communications about all of this, because if we can
explain it in a way that people can see this is a massive investment in the future of the islands, it could in effect be seen as a bad thing if we don't communicate it well. So I think we're trying to engage with all of our partners. And I also had a chat last week with our local MP, Derek Thomas, and began to float the idea about having a mini conference on the islands, hosted by the local MP, in order that we can get some very senior people down from these various agencies, be it Western Power, South West Water, particularly if we're going to change some of the ways that they may want to do things, because they tend to work, as you can understand, quite often in isolation of one another, and we could hopefully encourage better working. So there'll be much more conversation with our councillor, with yourselves, when we know all the detail ourselves.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Councillor Dean, please.
Thank you, Chief Executive. That was useful. This report, I have to agree with Councillor Bedford. I struggled with this report. I found it difficult to understand, difficult to read, and actually it seems to have been a theme through the whole project. We had a meeting right at the very beginning, a workshop right at the very beginning, where we said we would consult and liaise with the local population and get feedback and input from them. And we are where we are now because I don't think we've done that. So that's disappointing. It looks like we're finally getting to a position where we can achieve what we want to within the budget and within the time frame. The second point, which is again a criticism, sorry to be so negative, in the recommendations, the first one, 1A, it says, firstly, value engineering work to reduce the costs while achieving the same outcomes. Surely we should have been doing that anyway. And are we saying that we haven't done that on the previous parts of the project? And if not, why not?
The value engineering is effectively to look for the same outcome with cheaper materials or fewer sort of buffers within the system. And whilst I have directed at every stage our contractors to look for the low-cost solutions, we also have to bear in mind that you need some buffer to every design you put in place. What we're doing at the moment is reducing that buffer to the maximum we can to avoid buying more material than we actually absolutely have to use. Now, when we had £600,000 spare in the budget as a result of the contractual arrangements we come to on the project, that was sensible and feasible to do. Because of the delays, because of the requests for additional materials, because of the time that we've taken to get through licensing processes, that buffer is no longer available, the additional money. So we've had to reduce, every delay adds a substantial amount of cost to the project. We've had to reduce the budget back to be able to achieve what we can. And the additional costs that come in from statutory consultees wanting changes have major impacts on the material volumes. So to give you an example, in Periglis, shifting back by 3 metres, which was required by Natural England to avoid the dune being in the same position it is today, but being further back, added something like 40% to the costs for the Periglis works, because effectively you're going into a void with materials. And all of those are the reasons why we've had to then look for ways in which we can reduce the overall cost while maintaining the minimum standard necessary. And that's something that the engineers have had to work quite hard on.
And just briefly on the Porthmelon extra work, is that extra work or is that work that was part of the original project but we haven't completed it? Because like Councillor Williams, I understood that we basically finished at Porthmelon and now we're saying we haven't. Is that?
No, as the paper makes clear, we haven't finished at Porthmelon, and it's that 80 tonnes that is part of the original work programme that hasn't been delivered so far. It reflects the difficulties of delivery again. We had to stop running rock at the end of the season, and that's something we'd like to do if we can. But I prefer if we can avoid doing that because of the costs and call the Porthmelon works complete. But as I said, I want to be comfortable that that's going to provide the security we need to the design that we originally set out.
I just find this all a bit confusing and a bit upsetting, really, because I'm hearing from local users of Portland, and that you told them that the works were complete and that there were certain things that they wanted done that hadn't been done, and they were disappointed. And now you're saying that, that the work isn't complete. So that, I'm struggling here.
So when we finished placing the rock, I thought we had got to the point where it was complete. But talking to the contractors subsequently, they say they haven't placed to the design that was originally set. And that's something that we have to now choose whether we do or not.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sims, I think you were next.
When this all sort of, from my perspective, broke over the last 8 weeks, and my first thought was, I think goodness, I'm no longer the lead member for Place. However, a lot of people on VIA didn't seem to realise that, and I got lots of emails sent to me personally. So I made about 4 or 5 phone calls to people, and they were cross, but eminently reasonable, I thought. And so I've got a lot of input from people on VIA, and I think overall, I was just assured that hopefully something will be done to sort it out, and I think that it's been more or less, their issues have now been accommodated, which I think is almost miraculous. So well done with that. And obviously I didn't even know about the meeting last Friday, and that's very useful as well. But the question I have really is, now obviously the VIA project has been scaled back. Is it going to be as efficacious as you hoped for initially, or will it be slightly impaired?
It'll be substantially impaired. The consequence of scaling back will be either to leave some elements of the groundwater exposed to saltwater flooding, which may be accommodated by the South West Water proposals for investment on the island, but it won't accommodate the impact on the ecology. So that will remain, saltwater impact on the ecology. It's likely to leave the risk for some areas of farmland being affected by saltwater flooding. Now, some of the alternatives that I've proposed in the paper might deal with that. So, for example, maintaining ditches on the green and in the area behind the pool of Briar. Some of it might be accommodated by individual works at a site if we can afford to do that. And this is where you build, for example, a flood defence wall and flood defence gates around a business or a residence. The issues with those are that you are effectively doing a large volume of work with a small number of beneficiaries, direct beneficiaries. And the benefits that we gain from the work are reduced so that the funding available from the Environment Agency is reduced. So as it says in the paper, removing some of those benefits also removes some of the funding, and we'll have to be very careful about how we manage the offset between the two.
Okay, well, thank you for that. So it looks likely that at some point in the next 10, 15, 20 years, it's going to have to be revisited. It may not be your problem.
It won't be my problem, no, but it will be the problem for the island of Briar. And my concern, and the concern of the council, I suggest, would be to think about what the long-term strategy will be for dealing with those future impacts. Because at the moment we have funding available to do these things, but we haven't got enough to do what we want to do on Briar to the nth degree. And there's also a concern on Briar from the community about the impact of what we have proposed previously to do. In the future, as with all of the islands of the Isles of Scilly, the impacts of sea level rise will make future strategic decisions about where we live, where we work and where we play really difficult. And the Climate Change Adaptation Action Plan, which is yet to come before Council, will make that a little clearer. And we will need to be thinking strategically as a group of individuals, communities and organisations on how we'll plan for the future.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Peacock, please.
Yeah, just basically, I just wanted to highlight really the frustration that I'm picking up from St Agnes residents, the fact there's a delay. So any communication very quickly around that would be greatly appreciated by St Agnes residents, please.
The delay is a consequence of a process to obtain the planning permission, which has been set back by requests for additional information from a variety of the statutory consultees. Until we've had them accept and the planners accept the new information, the planning permission application can't proceed. That information was provided to the planners on Friday, and it'll be for them to work through the process with the statutory consultees to get to the point where they're satisfied that they can make a recommendation to council on the application that's in front of them.
Thank you. Guy, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just go back to what Councillor Dean said and the specific question on the extra work at Porthmelon. I'm still confused. Are you doing it? Are you not doing it? Where are we?
I'd like not to have to do it because it disrupts people again. But I need to establish with the engineers and with the council's, probably the Section 151 officer, about the way in which we deal with the risk that presents in not providing the additional 80 tonnes.
So my point is, as elected members, there'll be members of the public very concerned. They'll come to us and say, what's happening? We're having this meeting now. What do we tell them? When will there be a definitive answer if you're going to carry on or not, if you see what...
It won't be work that we do immediately because we'll have to plan and execute it. When it happens, it'll be 2 days' work, possibly, so not a major impact. What I want to be very confident about is what the consequence of not doing the work is before I ask council to make a decision whether to proceed or not. I've got a good understanding at the moment, but I want to be really sure that the impact at Porthmelon, of course, is that you've got the industrial estate behind, and you've got the fibre cable for the islands in the road immediately adjacent to the beach. Anything that affects that is then having a major impact on the islands. I want to be sure.
So the users of Porthmelon, i.e. the Sailing Club, Richard Mills, the whole raft, they'll be notified, yeah?
Yes, we will talk with them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Marcus.
Yeah, something just struck me. So, in the paper, you outline the consequences of not doing the works right as designed in the original application. Is the council liable for not doing those works? What happens if the flooding takes place? Because it seems to be like if we're not doing the major stuff and there's an event on Briar, and the residents of Briar say to the council, and is the council liable for you had the money to do it, but you decided not to do it?
As far as I understand, no. And it's because the activity that we undertake to do flood defences is something that we choose to do with the support of the community. Now, if the community doesn't support it and we don't do it, it's not a consequence of, it's not a case of, you didn't want this and therefore you have to lump it. It's because it's an activity that's not statutorily required of council to reduce flood risk. We're expected to provide information on where flood risk exists and to manage it with the community, but we don't have to undertake activities to reduce it. And correct me if I'm wrong. Is that right? Yes. That's how I understood it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I don't see any further questions at the moment. So you've heard the amendments articulated by Councillor Legg and proposed by him. Do we have a seconder for those amendments for the recommendations, please? Councillor Grottick. So with those, could I have a vote, please, on those amendments then? All those in favour? Thank you. That's carried. So I'd now like a proposer for the rest of the recommendations, please. Councillor Legg, seconded Councillor Sims. All those in favour? Thank you very much. That's passed. Thank you, Stephen. Right, we now move on to item 16 on our agenda, which is the Strategic Asset Management Plan in the hands of our Director of Place and Economy and Environment, Nicola. Good morning, Nicola. Thank you.
Good morning, members. Morning, Chairman. Thank you. So this item, it relates to our Strategic Asset Management Plan, and it's set out at Appendix A, so I hope you had a chance to look at it. It's a culmination of the work that was commissioned in October 22, and its purpose was to provide a framework for the council to manage both our corporate, our commercial and our housing assets over a 10-year timescale. So we're not going to do it here and now, we're not going to do every bit of it right now, but it's about saying what do we need to do over the next 10 years. And its objective was to ascertain how we can best invest, maintain and dispose of our assets in a more structured way. So the process included assessing where we are now, what assets have we got, and involved extensive consultation with stakeholders and partners and staff. It's identified, unsurprisingly, some significant challenges, and following a review of our assets, it looks likely over the next 10 years, in a worst case scenario, there could be a £10 million investment required in the estate. So what do we do about it? Well, it makes a series of recommendations. There are 14 key recommendations about how we prioritise what we do and how we work differently to meet those challenges. So the four first key steps really are to establish the governance around this. So how we're going to make sure this is managed and delivered as an action plan. So a capital and property board is proposed to provide the governance and accountability for the work that's required moving forward, and that's a recommendation for members to consider today. We also need to develop a funding strategy to fund the works, and we can't do all the works ourselves. We need to do part of this development or works in partnership. Who else can deliver for us? We also need to look at further grants, and we need to have a council investment plan. So that's a further recommendation. It recognises the need to work with contractors and the challenge of working both with our island contractors and mainland contractors. And this links in with a further key step, which is about working in partnership. And we touched on that with the South West Waterworks, where we need to coordinate and cooperate to get works done on the islands, be that the council, the Duchy, South West Water, Tresco Estate. There's no point us all competing together for the same resource. We need to find a way of working more effectively, and to that end we are already starting to work out a programme of works for the islands across all those stakeholders. So I think that's a useful start to that discussion. It links in with South West Water's plans on the off islands as well. So we've got the start of the journey here in this management plan, the asset management plan, but there's a long way to go. So the recommendations are to get us going, so basically to approve the plan, but then to establish the Capital and Property Board to oversee its implementation and the estate management as we move forward. And then members, we need to have some nominations to that board, so how many you want to put on it, whether it's the whole council or not, I'm not sure, but it's something for debate today. And then, of course, what's the follow-up? So I think we ought to be bringing back an action plan within the next 6 months to say, we've got this asset management plan, so what are we going to do next? So how do we prioritise? What are the key recommendations we're going to look at in the very short term? What's the medium term? What's the long term? So hold us to account for the work that's been done so far, so it doesn't sit on the shelf. It needs to be a call to arms, really, in terms of what we need to do moving forward. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Nicola. Councillor Dean, please.
Thanks, Chairman. Nicola stole one of my lines there that I was going to use. I love using the word journey, and it's the beginning of the journey. But yeah, just wanted to congratulate the guys who did this report. I think it's very comprehensive. It's got an awful lot of stuff in there, quite specific, and there's lots in there that certainly I already knew, and I think probably most members already knew. But it's now based on facts and research and communication with partners, etc., etc. So it's given us an evidence base to start this, to move this forward. And it's also quite scary, but I think that's a good thing. I think we need to be scared. There's a lot of things that need to happen here, and a lot of expensive things that need to happen here. And the sooner we establish this board and start looking at ways to achieve these things, the better. So I'll shut up for a minute because I think some other people want to say stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mumford, please.
Chair. I would just like to ask, do Dibble and Grub pay rent? Because on page 17, it's got no current yield target, no target yield in 3 years. It doesn't sort of seem to say anywhere how much rent they pay, because it's one of the things that is probably going to be recommended for us to get rid of.
Yes, there is rent paid on that property. We've redacted some of the information because it's commercially sensitive, so it wasn't right to put some of those things in the public domain. But there are rents paid that are assessed by the district valuer to make sure that they are at market value.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus, please.
Yeah, thank you for this. Really interesting piece of work. On page 132 of the pack, wherever page 9 of the actual report itself, it says it kind of brings into question the totals that were needed on the condition survey. It kind of says that they're not exactly right. There are 3 issues of the data, but the report authors have used those to kind of value and say how much is needed. I understand there will be some work needed, but if they're questioning the data and then using the data, that doesn't give me much confidence that actually that is the correct number. So, could you explain that, please, Nicola?
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think until you get to tender, you don't know what prices are like. I think the stock condition survey work totally underestimated the cost of the work, and there's further work to do to make those realistic. But until you get to tender prices, we won't know. But I think they were trying to work on ballpark figures for you now, just to give you an idea of the range of what the scale of the issue might be. But as I say, until we go to tender, we don't know the prices. And we can manage some of the risk about tender by some of the things they talk about in terms of working with contractors. So the reason why we get high contractor prices is because of the level of risk of working on the island. If we can reduce those barriers and risks, we might get more competitive pricing. So that's one of the key recommendations, really, is to find a different way of working with contractors. But yeah, until we go to tender, we don't know actual prices.
Yeah, just like, there are some other interesting points in there. I would make the point I'd like some definitions in there as well, like net book value, yield, things like that. It's great when you're talking about it loads of times, but it's a pain having to go and do some Googling to understand it. On recommendation 2 about the establishing of board, would it be useful to bring the terms and references to the Governance Committee on June 29th to check those ones over as an addition to that?
It would be good to put a timescale on that, so yes, that would be useful.
Thank you. Councillor Grotty.
Thank you, Chair. As Councillor Dean says, this is a very long journey. So in a minute, if I'm permitted, I'm going to make a recommendation that the nominations to the Capital and Property Board are actually made on the basis of people's portfolios rather than individual members being noted, because I can see we're going to be in for the long haul. But it's very good to start the journey, isn't it? Can I just clarify? I'm not quite sure whether it would be from the director or from Simon Mansell. I'm assuming that all key decisions will come back to the full council. I'm assuming that our disposal and acquisition policy, which reflects that, will remain in post, and this is, if you like, in addition. Nicola's nodding her head, so thank you very much. So, shall I make my nomination now or suggested nomination to the Capital and Property Board Chair, or would you like me to wait?
I think if you just wait a moment, please, because Councillor Williams wants to come in. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to draw members' attention to page 14, specifically the area around Park House. And as members know, there's some work planned to revamp Park House, but as this report makes clear, that working a long-term solution, it talks about extending things by 5 years. I think as members who've been here for 5 years know, 5 years goes very quickly, and sometimes you don't have much to show for 5 years' work. So I'm thinking about the Enna Farm, the old secondary school site, museum and cultural centre. If we want to be in a position where we've got a credible solution to a new park house in 5 years' time, I think we now need to ramp up those efforts with the sort of energy and commitment that we've seen on other capital projects. Otherwise, those 5 years are going to fly by and we're going to be in a similar position to where we are now. So I don't know where that fits in the bigger timeline, but I'd suggest we can't hang around too long before we start creating a vision and starting those conversations and discussions in a bit more detail than they are now. Otherwise, time's going to slip through our fingers.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. I'm not sure we're hanging around, but absolutely get your point, and we will schedule a time scale. Thank you. Councillor Bedford, please.
I just wanted to echo what other councillors said. It's a really good report, thanks, Nicola. It's a really good one to read. The recommendations are interesting, I think, like revisiting the tourist tax. No. And it's about the council actually taking responsibility for all the underbelly, almost, of our society, while you've got Duchy of Cornwall dealing with the yachts and the cruise ships. And I do feel that our council does take on some of the unseen work, and it's not recognised what we do on all the hard work and the background. I think it was interesting to learn about the Tresco example, about how they have a 3-year programme, a work programme, and I do agree a lot can be learned from that. And also about recommendation 13, about the workforce that we're going to have in the future. We've talked for years on the Isles of Scilly about growing your own workforce and encouraging people. And we've tended to focus at the young people from school, almost giving them apprenticeships. And I think we're missing a trick here. My husband trained as an electrician in his 40s. I did most of my qualifications between the age of 40 and 50. I think there's an opportunity when we have this board to look at a workforce, but not just the younger workforce. Let's try and pull in some of the 30 and 40-year-olds that almost want a career change. I also don't understand what Fran said about on this board, about people that already have a portfolio. I actually think we want a lot of new thinkers and, pull in as many thoughts and from different councillors from different backgrounds. I don't quite understand what you said, Fran, about using the portfolios to represent the board.
Councillor Grottig.
I'd like to see us all involved, and how we do that, I think, is something that the director could perhaps give some thought and report back on. But I just thought it would be strange if you started off with a capital and property board that didn't, for example, include the chair, the lead member for housing, and the lead member for planning. But that was very much my thoughts, that would start with that and evolve from there. I would hope there could be a facility where we could all join in, because, as you say, it's absolutely pivotal.
Thank you. Councillor Guy, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the commercial portfolio assets, Nicola, 6th Porthmelon and 12th Porthmelon, you've got the no, and then for development potential, yes. On 6, you've got possibly, and on 12, no. Can you just give me what possibly? That's just a question.
It's not to trick you. It's about how we link the master plan of Morwell and access to the Stone Yard with the rest of Porthmelon Industrial Estate. So you can see it's the geographical location that's slightly different there, and that allows a connection through potentially.
Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Legg, please.
On the sort of commercial portfolio, more than half are not recognised as having strategic value. And as hinted at in the planning application we had today, I dispute that sort of the council owning commercial properties is of strategic value. I think it definitely is. We've heard a lot in the past, not necessarily in this meeting, about the importance of food outlets to the tourist economy and the lack of provision. And then we see one of, if not the most successful eateries on the island on here, and they're paying a market rent and not meeting yield targets. I struggle to believe that building isn't a strategic asset, and it isn't a commercial asset either. Really, my point is about the strategic value of the commercial properties, and I'm very interested in how these conclusions were reached.
Nicola, do you want to come back?
Yes, Chairman. I think it's a good point, and I think what we've drawn down here is expertise from a different skill set that come from the NHS sector. The people who've written that consultancy report bring their commercial expertise, but it's very much from a health perspective. So I don't know whether we as a board would want to challenge some of the assumptions they've made. I think that's entirely appropriate. That report needs to be owned by members, and the recommendation needs to be owned by members. So what you've got is something in paper that is just a logical discussion of the facts as they saw them. But there's no reason why members have to follow those recommendations or come to the same conclusions. It's a starting point for that discussion, and that will be the work of the board, I think.
Chief Executive, please. Yeah, I think what the recommendation, Councillor Legg, is what we would hope would come back to, well, Councillor Legg?
Councillor Legg?
Sorry, Chief. I was just answering a bit more of your question. In terms of what the report is saying, I think, is not necessarily pushing it one way or the other. We're saying that those need to go to the board and those recommendations need to be worked up and brought back to council. The key point is, though, some councils decide to have a commercial estate to make a profit on, and therefore they set profit targets for those facilities, and if it doesn't hit that profit margin, then they get rid of it. Other councils decide to have particular targets of estate for more social good and maybe economic good that you're referring to, but we haven't got a clear policy either way about what we've got it for. So if it's a money-making venture, then it should be very clear that you've got it as a money-making venture and you've set targets for that. If it's about the social economic good of the island, then money might not be as important to you. Does that make sense? And I think we're not clear on why we've got some of these assets, and therefore by default we're completely not clear. Perhaps you get rid of it.
Yeah, very, very happy that the proposed board would look at this and set out that policy.
Thank you. Councillor Sims, please.
Page 6 or page 129, I'm just a little bit, I need the definition explained really. Net book value, that's obviously not what you could flog the building for, is it? I mean, I can't imagine anybody's going to pay 63,000 quid for the toilets on the Strand. And it also looks a bit odd if you've, £5.5 million investment into the town hall, and it's on paper it says it's worth 610,000. I just wondered if you could. I'm not understanding what net book value means really.
Yeah, I'll bring Russell in a moment. There's a difference between net book value and market value. It's in terms of our asset management and our financial management system. So, Russell, can you give a bit more detail?
Yes, I can. Net book value is obviously the value that we carry the asset on the balance sheet at. The accounting regulations give different methods of asset valuation depending on the type of asset, and there are a number of different ways of valuing certain assets. So it's the carrying cost that's supposed to reflect the cost of that asset on the balance sheet, but as Nicola says, it doesn't necessarily relate to the market value. Usually the market value is probably of a higher value than the carrying value. Not always, but usually. But for instance, if you are carrying a library building, quite often it's valued in terms of accounting as a library building, not as a commercial asset that could be sold to be converted into a commercial asset. It is valued as a library building. As I say, it is what is valued on our balance sheet as under the CIPFA code for accounting.
Thank you very much, Russell. Steve?
Yeah, that's fine. I knew I wouldn't be any wiser after you answered really, but thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any more questions at the moment, so I'll come back to Councillor Grottick for your recommendation, please.
Thank you. I was just going to make a start with nominations to the Capital and Property Board, but as I would like to emphasise, as far as I'm concerned, this is just a start. But I was going to nominate the Chair, because I think this is an absolutely pivotal project that the Chair would want to be involved in, with the assistance of the lead member for housing and the lead member for planning, and I have checked that both of them and indeed the chair would be happy to make a start in this way, and obviously I leave it to colleagues to comment on whether or not they think that would be a good start. And I would nominate those three post holders.
I'd just like to say from the chair that I think Councillor Bedford's point is very valid, but I don't see any reason why the board, however it is formed, cannot extend the membership of that board as they see appropriate and in fairness to all councillors. So I'd just like to make that comment. So you've had a proposal from Councillor Grottick. Is there a seconder for that, please? Councillor Sims. All those in favour? It's carried. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much for the report, Nicola. So item 17 on our agenda is the Town Hall, Cultural Centre and Museum Shared Prosperity Fund bid. Also in your hands, Nicola. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a short report. It accompanies other reports that have been before you for Shared Prosperity Fund. So this is our fifth application for funding under Shared Prosperity Fund, and it's the final bid to secure that funding stream. It follows previous applications, and in total they amount to now £7 million. The bid deadline is today, so I tried to circulate the report as early as possible. Basically, we need to seek approval submission of this bid. It's for £800,000. It forms part of that package of £7 million ask of that Shared Prosperity Fund. Having submitted, we're now hoping to get a decision between June and July for all the bids that with the accountable body Cornwall Council and the Economic Prosperity Board will be considering our applications, hopefully all in June, but potentially in July as well. And if successful, on paper at least, that will give us the full funding package for the delivery of the project. Obviously, as you've heard from Stephen's project, things change, but for now this is the final bid on the table to bring that funding package together. So that's before you today, and it's for the submission of £800,000 to Shared Prosperity Fund. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola. Councillor Grottick.
Thank you, Chair. As members will know, the full first attempt for the Shared Prosperity Fund fell down, but these are smaller tranches that actually make up the funding, as is explained. Of course, inflation is a concern, but everyone is very well aware of that. I would just say that this appears to me to be fairly straightforward, but it is actually just the last tranche of the funding that we actually approved that we were going to make the grant application for in the first place. The larger grants fell foul of various issues, but these are smaller tranches which hopefully will be more sympathetically received. I would just say that para 12 does reassure, but paragraph 20, I would suggest hopefully work will start now. So just quickly to clarify, para 12 does explain that the capital bill for the project will only go ahead once the full business case has been approved and all the funding is secured. So you're not making a full and final decision now, which is reassuring. And para 20, I hope that work, and I believe work is starting already and will hopefully continue apace to cover all of the issues and challenges. As Nicola said quite recently, an issue sometimes becomes a challenge, but sometimes if you can sort it, it doesn't. Thank you. I'm happy to recommend eventually the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Dean.
Yeah, as Councillor Grottick said, it's just the final piece of the jigsaw to hopefully get the funding all in place. So I'll happily second the recommendation.
Thank you. So you've had a proposer and seconder. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for the report, Nicola. Item 18 on our agenda is the Business Improvement Districts report of our Chief Executive. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. There's two parts to this report, which I'll take you through. So this work started, in fact, a year ago, I guess, when I was invited to attend the Island Partnership Executive Group for a discussion about business leadership, business engagement, business focus and future for the Isles of Scilly. And there was a discussion about whether the Island Partnership felt that there was time for considering a wider remit to start to look at things such as skills, future business development needs of the islands, as well as tourism and destination marketing, of course. But at the same time, I did, on behalf of you all, because I know it was raised with me by many of you, raise the issue of the current funding model for the Island Partnership being a partnership organisation, meaning that by default other businesses were not members of the Island Partnership, whether in effect there was a better way of getting a more inclusive model. And I undertook at that time, because, local government does have a role here, colleagues, in terms of economic prosperity. Under the statute, it's one of the roles that we should undertake. And I thought that actually we needed to have a conversation about what the future might be. So that then led to a proposal to explore whether a business improvement district model, which I'll explain in a minute, was suitable for the Isles of Scilly and was suitable for the Island Partnership to consider. And I undertook, because I felt it was appropriate, to start that piece of work. I discussed it with the Island Partnership, who were happy for me to do so. I've discussed it with lead members, the Chair and Vice Chair. I discussed it with the government in terms of the bid team to see whether the rules would allow this proposal to actually be considered, to which they said it would. And I managed to work with some colleagues in Cornwall who are consultants who do all of the bids across Cornwall about whether I could get some pro bono work out of them to see whether or not we could decide whether this had any legs or not, which is what they've done. The highlight of that is that all parties think that this is a proposal worth exploring, but in order to get it to a position where decisions can be made, there needs to be a full business case worked up. And that's what I'm asking for today, is for the funds to allow those consultants to work up that full business case. What a bid is in effect a way that business improvement, as decided by the business sector itself, is funded. It has to be subject to a referendum of all business rate payers, although there's some definitions to that. And if there's a 50% majority, then a 5-year funding package is put in place, which is funded from a top-up on business rates in effect. And that might be a way of all businesses that are eligible to be funding the Island Partnership and therefore by default becoming members. Interestingly, it would also include ourselves as council, because we pay business rates as well. That would then allow the Island Partnership to consider whether or not that is appropriate for themselves, because the process then is they make a formal application to us as the council to go ahead with it. We decide whether we agree or not, based on their own business plan, and subject to everybody agreeing, then we hold a referendum, and depending on the outcome of the referendum, as I said, if there's a majority, it goes ahead. But behind all of that, there's a very complex number of calculations that need to be done on the way that business rates are paid, whether there's any exemptions, who pays the most business rates, etc., etc., and that's the work that needs to be worked up next. So the first part of the report is to allow me to access funds from our contingency budget, which is where I've agreed it with the 151 officer, for that work to be completed, and then for the Island Partnership to have a board meeting to decide whether or not they feel it's something that they wish to take forward. So that's that part. The second part is council specific, and that is, you may have heard, unfortunately, in the chairman's opening remarks, we gave our condolences to the chairman of the Local Enterprise Partnership. Local enterprise partnerships are going to be done away with. Currently, we are a member of the Cornwall and Isles of Scilly Local Enterprise Partnership, and it's not going to be very long before the government asks our view as a council on whether we want that model to continue or not, because local enterprise partnerships are going to be taken over by councils. So there is an option that we continue with Cornwall and Isles of Scilly Economic Forum type of proposal, but that would be led in effect by Cornwall Council, with the staff hosted by themselves, or do we want a different model? Do we think the Joint Economic Prosperity Board, which I know members have got a view on, is appropriate for us as the Isles of Scilly, or should we seek a different funding stream specifically for ourselves or on a wider geographical basis? So the second part of the work is I've asked them to help us give some thinking that I can bring back to you, to members, about what are the options then for you to consider about how you want, in effect, council leadership on terms of economic investments to be made. So it's asking them, in effect, to do a policy piece of work, to come back to you, to say these are the options for us to debate, so that we're ahead of the game when government says, so what is the Council of the Isles of Scilly's view on the landscape post local enterprise partnerships? That's what that's about. Because if we're going to be asked it, I would guess it probably the next 6 months or so. And at the moment, I don't think we've had that debate, and you've not had proposals put in front of you. So the first part is about funding of the island partnership through a bid type arrangement. The second part is a piece of, if you like, consultancy work from me as your chief executive to bring a report back to you on the council's leadership in economic forums going forward. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. Councillor Sims, please.
Yeah, I have discussed this with Paul, and it strikes me as quite a good idea, because I don't wish to fault the IP. I think they do a splendid job, but they're not a Chamber of Commerce. There's lots of companies over here that don't fit into that. I mean, builders, there's absolutely no reason to them engage, so they haven't really got that. And so I mean, I would be very supportive of it. And also, I think that the way that the IP is funded is, at the moment, it's arguable that some of the very bigger players have an undue influence possibly could have undue influence in the decisions that the IP makes, because they're the main funders. So I think this makes it more universal, and if it works, I think it would be beneficial. So I would very happy to propose both recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Sims. Councillor Marcus, please.
Yeah, no, I had a good conversation with Paul about the eligibility and how the democracy around the situation, the proposed bid would go. It is quite interesting. In terms of the money, would it be possible to ask the IP for a donation, considering we're helping them stay relevant and increasing their remit? So rather than just a donation of £7.5 grand, get them to put some money and put some skin in the game, then that would minimise cost for us and increase value for them, I think.
Chief Executive?
Certainly I could ask councillors. I haven't asked at the moment for two reasons, really, I suppose. One is that I felt it was appropriate for us as a council to show some leadership in this area. Secondly, I don't know what the current budget is looking like for the Island Partnership, but probably the most important thing is that, you know, this would be a fundamental change in the way that the Island Partnership is funded, which would lead to a referendum every 5 years. So in effect, it would be a brave move for them, because you're subject to a vote from all of your business payers every 5 years about that funding model still going. So I haven't asked the question at the moment. Members, I'm quite happy to, if that's the view of the room, but I thought it was appropriate as a policy piece of work for the council to fund it, and that's the reason why I went ahead as I did. But I wanted to bring it to council.
Can I have a proposal then, if you want to get the temperature of the room, that we ask IP for a donation to this work?
Before we take that, Councillor Marcus, Councillor Grottick wanted to come in.
I was just going to make the point that this is not just about the bid. If you look at which is obvious, but if you look at recommendation 2 and the Chief Executive clarified, it's about the role of the Council and the Council's leadership with wider economic developments. And at the moment, it's a very fluid situation out there because we've got the formation of the Greater South West, where Cornwall almost assumed, I think, that we would just be scooped up, and in fact we haven't, because I think the Chair, the Chief Exec and some colleagues believe that our future lies with a more robust and developed island forum. So it's a really fluid situation of which this bid is obviously going to be an important part. So I wouldn't disagree, we could ask the IP, but I think in a way there are wider benefits to the piece of work, which hopefully will be beneficial to the IP, but it's not just for them. So I would, dare I say it, I would ask them to make a contribution, but I don't know that we should be looking for too much at this moment in time, but that's just my personal thought. Perhaps Councillor Roger will put his light on. I'm waiting, but it hasn't gone on yet.
Yeah, I haven't defined what a contribution is, and members don't have to support or even second that recommendation. And I would agree with you that, given my experience of the Economic Prosperity Board, something separate or related to Cornwall would be much more preferable and productive for us.
Absolutely. Thank you. Councillor Sims?
I would just say that I think that whilst I have no objection in principle for asking the IP for donation, I don't really want to create a situation which puts them off the idea at a very early stage.
Thank you. Councillor Roger?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I can't answer on behalf of the board here at this meeting of the IP, but yes, do ask. I would point out that the Islands Partnership is a not-for-profit organisation, doesn't retain reserves, it spends its money each year on its activities, and therefore, any such donation from budget at this stage of the year would have an impact on its deliverables. But do ask. I mean, it's important, I think, that the bid process takes it not for the Islands Partnership, it's for the economy of the islands. The Islands Partnership, after this process, if it works, would fundamentally cease to exist and become a business improvement district, which is another organisation altogether. So I don't think it's not an investment in the Islands Partnership, it's an investment in our economic delivery for these islands, which without it, we will not need to discuss anything else we've spoken about today.
Thank you. Councillor Guy?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think it'd only be good for the islands, and with the proviso that we do ask, and only ask, I'm happy to second the recommendation from Councillor Sims.
Thank you. Councillor Legg, please.
Can I ask about the sort of proposed gateways for this? Would the next step after it's looked into be to come back to the council, or would it be the referendum that came next and then it comes to the council?
So a business improvement district has to be a proposal from the private sector. So it's not a proposal from the council. We're just facilitating that model being worked up for all the reasons that I think Councillor Roger articulated, really, and Councillor Sims. So this is a piece of work to get a fully costed model produced, which would then have to go to the Island Partnership Board for them to decide whether they want to take it ahead or not. If they decide that they want to take it ahead, they have to make a formal application to us as the council, and we would be debating in front of us today, if that goes ahead, their business plan and their proposals and their request for us to undertake a referendum. So it's at that point that the council, in effect, says yes or no. It's after the Island Partnership agree that's the way they want to go. It doesn't come to us first, it goes to the Island Partnership first. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. I will second, because I don't think anyone has, I will second the recommendation by Councillor Market.
Thank you. Just before we go to the vote on that, I would just endorse some of the things which Councillor Sims has said. I think we've got to bear in mind, as pointed out by Councillor Roger, that if we were to seek any monies from the Island Partnership, that would have to come out of their budget, which I don't know when their budget was set, but or when the new budget's going to be set. But it obviously we'd have to wait for that process. And as Councillor Rogers said, they are a not-for-profit, and I think there's a lot of businesses on Scilly that are outside of the IP, as has already been pointed out, and some of them benefit from the IP without joining and paying their dues, as it were, for the benefits, leaving that to others. So I think the Chief Executive's suggestion of looking for this business improvement district is a much fairer way of dealing with business on Scilly. It also will hopefully address some of the issues Councillor Williams raised earlier about our retail businesses and how we've got empty shops, empty banks and everything else. It will be a real economic boost for the islands. My own view at the moment is that as a council we should lead in this, and we should try and deal with this and set it up, if indeed it's voted on to be set up, for the economic prosperity of the islands. I'd just like to make that point. Thank you. Meanwhile, we have a proposal from Councillor Marcus.
Let's ask one more question. Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry. Paul. So we commission work. That work then gets delivered to the IP, and then it comes. If they accept it, amend it, it comes back to us to decide whether we want to go ahead and propose that to government, and then the election happens. So we don't get to see this piece of work before.
You're more than happy to see the piece of work. I think the point I was making is it's not going to come to you for a decision. So it comes to you to a decision after it's gone to the Island Partnership, because it has to be an application from the business sector. So of course, members can absolutely see the outcome of the piece of work, but you wouldn't be making a decition on it. That was my point. Sorry if I didn't explain that very well.
Yeah, it'd be good to see the outcome of that piece of work if it gets passed. What was I going to say? A timeline. If we passed it, there's no dates in there.
Yeah, I'm quite happy separate to this meeting, because I didn't want to inundate you with paper, having had comments before Councillor Marcus, but there's a detailed project plan that was associated with those costs, so I will circulate that to members separately, which lays out the timeline, which I think is about a 3-month piece of work.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So are you still wishing to make that proposal, Councillor Marcus? Yeah, and seconded by Councillor Legg, that the Island Partnership are asked to make a donation towards this. All those in favour of that proposal, please. We got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I don't think it's carried. Okay, thank you. So can we go? We've got Councillor Fraser up here as well.
He can't vote.
He can't. Oh, he can't vote. So thank you very much. Thank you very much.
You're only asking.
Yeah. Well, okay, we're only asking, so I will go with the ask. But I would say to councillors that I don't feel that the Islands Partnership should be held, responsible for a lot of these costs, because the costs actually will benefit the whole of the islands and the island economy. And I don't think the Island Partnership are in a position to be able to contribute very much, but that's just my opinion. Chief Executive.
Just so members are crystal clear, as Councillor Grottick said earlier, the bit that you've amended in terms of asking for a donation
or a contribution, sorry, was your words in the recommendation, relates to recommendation 1 only. Recommendation 2 is a piece of work, as I've said, specifically for the council and does not include the Island Partnership. It's to do with council's leadership in terms of the demise of local enterprise partnerships.
Your assumption is correct.
Okay, thank you. So that's carried. Could I now please turn to the other 2 recommendations? Sorry, Councillor Grotte.
No, I was getting a bit ahead of myself. Apologies. Carry on, Chair.
Thank you. So we've now got a proposer for the 2 recommendations, which is Councillor Grottick. Seconder, please. Councillor Guy. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you, Chief Executive, for your report. Right, we move on to the last item in part 1, which is the review of members' allowances, and that's in the hands of our monitoring officer, Simon Ansell. Thank you, Simon.
Good morning, members. The report is fairly straightforward and suggests to members that there should be an uplift of 6% on the special responsibility allowance for members. That's in addition to the inflationary increase that has been awarded this year. This is a one-off to take into account the additional work that lead members or those with special responsibilities are undertaking for the council, and in part to recognise the effects of inflation overall. This is in addition as well to the fact that the allowances will be reviewed fully next summer. That's the summer of 2024, not in 2025 as is set out in paragraph 7, with the aim that an independent financial advisor will do the review of allowances next summer, with these then due to come in place in May 2025, immediately after the elections. I'm happy to take any questions on the report.
Thank you. Councillor Guy.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just on the page 4 of 4, there is no chairman and licensing on the, and there should be, I believe.
Yep, I do apologise for that. But yes, that would be included.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sims, please.
Lead member for children. Now that's a statutory role, and it always used to be as committee chairman rate. Now I don't know if that's changed, but I'm querying that. But it's just down as the other lead members, and I thought there was a larger remuneration for that.
I've taken the remuneration rates as are currently being paid, and then just applied the inflationary increases to them. I can recheck it, but that was the rates that have been supplied to me by finance.
Okay, fine. I'm just making the point. It doesn't affect me at all, though it probably would affect Joel.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Williams.
No, I was just going to back up Councillor Sims's comment. I think it has been remunerated at a higher level, so I think that's probably a typo. But I think in a broader sense, I think I started part of this conversation a while ago. I think there has been some slippage in the level of work we're doing compared to remuneration. The gap has been getting wider, so I welcome this and the review in a year and even that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Grottick.
Yes, I did actually query with Mr. Thomas if, in fact, that was correct, because I was of the opinion that the statutory role of lead member for children was remunerated at the level of committee chair. Having been away for a training session where I sat next to the lead member for Rotherham at the time of the dreadful instances there, and the poor chap had spent the previous week in court. So if push comes to shove, the lead member for children has a most onerous responsibility, which you wouldn't wish on anyone. So I really think it should be remunerated at that level, and I hope it is.
Thank you for that. I totally agree with that. Councillor Mumford.
Yes, I agree with that. When I was the lead member for children, I was paid the same as the chairman.
Okay. So if you take that away, Simon, please. Thank you very much.
Will do, yeah.
Councillor Marcus.
Yeah, so with that amendment, like Chairman of Licensing, lead member for children is paid as a
Chairman, oppose the recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Guy, seconding. All those in favour? Thank you very much. It's passed. Thank you for the report, Simon. And members, that now concludes part one of our meeting. Part two reports are for your information only. We now move into part three, which is the exclusion of the public, which you need to vote on, members, please, that under Section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following item of business on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of the schedule of 12A of that Act as amended. So could I please have a proposer for that, please? Councillor Mumford, seconded Councillor Legg. Would you vote on that, please? Thank you. That's passed. So we will now